setup, I feel like I'm on Dr. Phil or something.
Yeah, yes. We're going to talk about our emotions in just a minute, like they do on those talk shows.
Our feelings?
Yeah, talk a lot about our feelings. And
my feelings have been hurt so much.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do.
Mine too. I've been using a lot of tissue, and especially as Kohl's goes down, I need a lot of tissue. But good thing I stay in hotels a lot and don't pay for my tissue. I just put it in my suitcase before I go. So at least the tissue is no additional cost. For those that haven't met him before, this is Reed Harris. Reed Harris is Senior Vice President of everything at UFC and in charge whatever the hell needs to get done at any particular time. And mostly negotiations and relationship management is how I think of it. But there's a wisdom about you when you talk to other people that you have an outcome in mind. And I feel like we know each other well enough that I more or less know what you're thinking about most things, or I understand how your brain works in a lot of ways, I think. But when I see you manage other things that, instead of being visibly annoyed or saying things that maybe you'd rather, you didn't say publicly at some point in the future, you reflect back on that. I see you're good at taking an extra second to assess things.
Yeah, I think about what's my goal. What's my goal right now? Is it to show this guy I'm smarter than him? I don't give a shit about that.
What he's saying, and I'm sorry to interrupt, this is a very important negotiation note. So write that down right from the beginning, actually. When you're negotiating something,
that's right.
Your ego is not your friend in negotiations. Your ego is not always your friend. Usually it's not your friend. And what he said is very important. What's my goal here? What's the outcome we have in mind?
Yeah, and when I negotiate, I truly go into the negotiations trying to make it win-win for everybody.
Why is that important?
Because it first of all, the people I negotiate with, mostly I'm going to be negotiating with again in a month, right? So, it's not win or lose. It's we got to figure this out, and we got to figure it out so it works for me and it works for you. When I was buying land, I was doing big deals, and I'll tell you, you're not going to go in there and blow some guy and get his land for free. You're just not. These are guys that have owned this shit for 30, 40 years. They got their kids there salivating because they're going to get the money, and there's been 4 other guys that have talked to them already. So you have to figure out what motivates them. Sometimes it's not money. Sometimes it's other things. And I told him I was going to tell you this story because I up so bad. I bought a car last week, and the guy came back, and I lowballed him, and he came kind of close, and I said, "Okay, I'll take it." And he goes, "Really?" And I went, "Shit!" and he was the sales manager. I thought to pull him aside and say, "Don't ever do that again," because you made me think, "Oh shit, I should have gone lower," right? But it was okay. It was just $1,000 or $2,000. But it was funny because I realized that I had screwed up. I should have taken a different approach. But what they do is they have you invest time, and it takes them a long time to bring you the numbers, and that's a technique. You get people invested in their time. Like if I sit down and talk to you for an hour about something, and we're going back and forth, you're less likely to walk away.
Yeah, I put a time constraint on them. When somebody tries to negotiate with me in that way, I say, "Hey."
Perfect.
And this is a very useful thing for us to go back and forth and explain to them a little bit. So when you deal with, say a car negotiation, particularly a used car, but any car negotiation, they're going to play games at the dealership where, I got to go talk to so-and-so, have a conversation.
A higher authority.
So I refuse to speak to anyone there about if they want to talk to me about cars, say, "Hey, where's the sales manager? Where's the sales manager?" I don't want to speak to anybody except, the top sales.
That's the guy I ended up with, yeah. I didn't start that way, but...
I get to there immediately. I'm going to share just a couple bullet points. I get to that immediately, and I make it clear to them, "Hey, I have an obligation in a little bit. I'm here to discuss it." Yeah, we can discuss it. I have an obligation in 80 minutes, whatever it is. If we can come to terms before then, that's great. And if not, probably it's not meant to be. And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I walked in there. I didn't care either way if I got it. So what I started with was I should probably tell you that my friend's a wholesaler, and I've looked on Meacham. And Meacham is the database for used cars in the United States. And the guy just looked at me like, oh, shit. So I said, so I know the price points, you know. And this, and anyway, I blew it. And I'm willing to say that, because negotiating is like sport. You have to approach it, you know, you have to know your goal. You have to try to create a win-win. And there's a lot of different ways of doing that. The sales manager is called the higher authority. You know, I'd love to do it for you, Derek, but I need to go talk to the sales manager, and he's tough. You know, in my case, it's I got to talk to Dana, which is true a lot of times, but and then I can come back and say, no, I wasn't able to make it work, or I can make it work. A lot of times there is no higher authority other than the guy you're talking to, right? I'm talking to the guy's manager. Who's he gonna? And especially if the guy's young and he's cocky, those are the best, because they're gonna take responsibility for the whole thing. And I'll say to him, man, I got to go talk to so-and-so. You know, I can't make this deal. And they'll say, well, I'm the guy that's making the deals, and I'm the guy that can make the decision. And I want him to say exactly that, because then I can ask him, well, what do you want to do? And he can't, you know, I can say, listen, I like the deal, but I need to run it up the flagpole, right? Even though I can make the deal. Wait a day, call him back and say, okay, we got a deal. You know? Now, I don't do a lot of that at UFC, because the idea for us is to try to make them as much as we can. But we do a lot of negotiating with the sponsors who come in and want to work with the athletes, but a lot of times they don't know the market at all. So we have to educate them and explain to them how it works. And then even sometimes when they do know the market, they don't want to pay a lot of money, which is that's fine. That's their prerogative. It doesn't mean they're going to get the athlete, though, right? So I'm going to tell my story about you. So I believe it actually was this room, because I'm looking at the room. I had dinner with Donald Trump and Sheriff Joe Lombardo, who's from Las Vegas, and then the guy Holman that runs the border. There were about 8 or 9 of us. I was with a friend of mine who's a big donor for him. And he told us a story about this building. There's a guy named Phil Ruffin who owns Treasure Island, and they were building this building in 2008 when the whole thing collapsed. And I was in California, collapsed there terribly. Las Vegas was worse. They were going to build it and sell condos, which was happening a lot in Las Vegas. A lot of the major casinos were building condos. And so he said Phil Ruffin's telling this story. He said they met and they said, what do we do? Do we file bankruptcy? Now, when you're building a building like this, you start a company that's primarily just for this building. So when you bankrupt, you don't bankrupt your company, you just bankrupt this thing here, okay? So Donald said to Phil, let me talk to the bank. And Phil said, why would you talk to the bank? Because this is 2008. The banks didn't talk to anybody. They loaned money and you paid it back. That was it. That was the discussion. So anyway, Phil Ruffin says, so Donald went and talked to the bank. He says, tell him what happened. He said, they knocked $200 million off the bill. And he goes, they took a huge haircut, and they all start laughing. And I'm thinking, wow. And he said, now it's free and clear. And he said, Phil, what did we make on this building last month? And he says, I think $3 million, $1.5 million each. And I looked at Lombardo and we both like, oh shit, that's, Now the only other guy I've ever heard tell that story is Derek. And remember when you told me about the land? The deal that you did where he went to the bank, and back then unheard of, right? We didn't do that. My building company went out, not under, but we had to stop building, and the banks weren't doing anything for us, They just wanted their money. That's all they cared about. So tell them your story.
I was 29, or I just turned 30. I was right around my 30th birthday. I had it in my head, this is 2009. And there's so much real estate was on sale. In Vegas, there's 22,000 foreclosures listed, and another 20,000 foreclosures that weren't listed because they didn't want to overwhelm the market. There was a normal amount might be 1,500 or something. So they had 42,000, and they didn't even want to have all the shit listed. They're just sitting there. And I had this thought of like, well, I always think about land as being like at least inflation neutral and probably is going to perform better than inflation of any decent quality land. So I did buy some properties out here, but the story he's talking about is I was looking at properties in the Midwest, and I was calling a bunch of small developers that people that would buy 40 acres, 120 acres, and do little subdivisions. So I'd go find these people's advertising from the past, or real estate stuff from the past, and like, oh, they were doing this. Well, let's see what's going on. What do they got? And I'd poke around and talk to some of the small developers, and eventually you'd find people that I knew there'd be plenty of people that are over leveraged, and a lot of those people built $10 million houses, and then they were totally,
right.
And they'd like to keep their house if they could, or sell their house if they needed to, but they'd like to do something. And I thought, well, there's a couple people that I had deeper talks with. I'm like, well, why don't you sell me, 20% of a subdivision? I'm going to pick the best lots, and I'm going to pay you, probably less than it cost you to buy the cornfield and, the infrastructure. And I wanted to buy things that, they already had, water, electricity, sewer, streets.
Improvements were in, yeah.
Everything's there. There's some houses existing, but they were just early in selling it, and there's a lot of stuff available yet. And I'd go buy, 12 or 20 lots from these developers. And the one negotiation that you're talking about, I think, is I went with the developer to the bank. There's like, they're not gonna blah blah blah. And I said, what do they got to lose? I said, they're not getting any money from you guys. You can't rent the shit. It's a lot. It's a lot. You can't rent it. You're probably close to giving it back to them, and they're not collecting any money from it. So that they can't collect any revenues from you. If you do a contract for deed deal with me, say 5-year, 6-year amortization, I'll give you 10% down, cash. They're collecting some money. I'll pay off the balance over the next 5-6 years. I did 5 years for one, 6 years for a different contract I did like this. And so they got a stream of money coming in. They got nothing to lose for that. There's no reason they don't want to do that. So I go meet with the developer, and he's got one business partner, and that guy's kind of laissez-faire, and it's like, whatever you think, So he kind of puts his partner in charge. And we go talk to a bank vice president that owns that loan. And I explained to him my intentions, like, hey, I'll buy a dozen lots here. I'm going to put 10% down, and then I'm going to make, payments over, whatever it was, 5 or 6 year amortization schedule. And pay it off over time. So, and we'll do it like this. We'll structure it. They're like, if I sell a lot, you can keep 100% of the money minus closing costs. Let me take my closing costs out of it. And if I sell the lot, I have the right to sell it anytime I want to. But you get 100% of the proceeds. It goes to paying down the debt. Mm-hmm. So I get zero cash flow, but I'm buying the thing super cheap. 30-something% of what they were previously selling for, what other people who have homes there paid for stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So the bank vice president tells me, well, that's not how banking works.
That's why I remembered the story.
Yeah.
I could see him saying that.
He's like, well, that's not how banking works, blah, 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 blah. We're not here making loans, blah, blah. And
we're not discounting.
And I said, I don't, he kept talking about, he talked about it like it was a new loan, like I'm requesting a new loan. And I tried to explain to him a couple times, like, you have zero downsides. I said, eventually it got to a point, I'm like, if I'm the idiot that you think I am, then you just take my money, you take the 10% down. If I can't make the payments, then you take whatever I did pay you.
No harm, no foul, right?
And, I get screwed, and you keep all the money, and you'll be delighted to prove yourself right of how dumb I am, and I don't know what I'm doing, On the other hand, if you have the cash flow, then at least you have the cash flow. These guys can keep their credit score intact, that there's some money coming in here, and you're not foreclosing on the property, and they don't have to have a business bankruptcy, and they personally guaranteed these loans too, because it's a smaller
really?
deal.
Okay.
Yeah. So they can keep their credit score intact, that in a couple of years when there's an okay economy, they can still go do business, maybe with you, and everybody's better off. So everybody here is better off. I'm the one taking the risk, putting the money down. And he's like, that's just not how banking works. And I said, you're telling me like it's as if it's again like a new loan origination. I'm like, I'm not asking you to make me a loan. I'm basically making myself a co-signer on an existing loan that I'm giving you money, and I'm telling you I'll make the payments on this carve out of properties. So you got to do a carve out here, and you got to say if I pay them off, then those are mine, and those guys have nothing to do with it anymore.
Right.
It's very simple. So he's kind of a little more insulting over time. So all right, I got another idea then. How about you? How about you eat shit, and I'm gonna go do a deal just like this with somebody else who wants to do a deal and won't mind taking my money when they have zero downside to do so. And he's like, and that was the end of that meeting. I think that was Thursday. I think that was a Thursday. Monday, I get a phone call from the bank president. That was the vice president that I just told you and eat shit. The bank president calls me back on Monday. What could he possibly say? What's he going to say?
Sorry.
Yeah, we'd like to talk to you about your proposal.
Yeah.
Is what I'd say to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So, hey, it's come to my attention.
Right.
You had a meeting last week. I'd like to talk to you more about that.
Right.
All right. Is he even going to negotiate, or is he just going to do that deal? Yeah, there wasn't even a negotiation.
Right.
It wasn't even a negotiation. And he didn't quite apologize, and I don't give a shit if he apologized, because what was the goal? Was my goal that I need an apology?
No,
or
exactly.
I don't need an apology.
Who cares, right?
I don't need an apology. But now they're happy to do the deal, the exact deal that I wanted to do on Thursday. Now his boss wants to do that deal on Monday. Probably I could negotiate something different in my favor if I want to at that point. And I just kind of reiterated bullet points. I'm like, if I sell the stuff, the closing costs get covered, rest of the revenue goes back to you until this amount is paid off. I can sell it whenever I want to, but the money goes to you. Can't sell it for less than I bought per unit. That was one other caveat. Can't sell it, for less than I purchased it for from them, or agreed to pay for it. So I can't sell it for a loss and screw them somehow.
Right.
But I can sell it at my discretion, so long as it's above that dollar amount. And that comes off. I still got to make the monthly payment on top of that. That comes off the back end of the loan, not towards the monthly payments. And it was easy. It was an easy thing. And some of those lots I was paying like $28,000 for, and then selling for like $70,000 like a year and a half later.
Yeah.
And
the improvements cost that. Yeah.
I didn't,
without the dirt.
And at that time, and you'd probably know this, and maybe some of them do, but at the time there was a 5-year tax abatement. So my property taxes on that land was $1 per lot per year.
Yeah.
$1 per year I'm paying in property taxes as a holding cost, and minimal insurance costs.
Yeah, insurance is minimal.
And let me point out again, when I say I paid $28,000 and then got 70, is like no. I put 10% down. I paid $2,800
right
in some monthly payments, and then they're starting to sell like that, $65,000, $70,000, $80,000. So it did great. Turned out great
for you and the bank.
Everybody was better off.
Right, and the developer. Right.
Everybody was better off. But that's just a little unorthodox thing. If you can understand how pieces work in an economy and what people's incentives are, what are the goals of the various parties involved?
Right.
Then once in a while you come up with a unorthodox but very viable model that, if you can make other people's life a little better off, sometimes you can make a lot of money doing that. So I'd do those deals all day. Wish I could do more like now. Would you pay 10% down for some shit like that you could get 2.5 times your...
I wish I knew you back then.
Well, yeah.
You watch this video all the way through, and that tells me you're dedicated to learning more and earning far above average outcomes in your life. Congratulations for that. But now it's time to take action. If you could have earned those results by yourself, you would have done it already. My head coach has opened up a few spots on his high-demand calendar for an in-person, one-on-one strategy session to help you. On this call, we'll give you the pragmatic advice that you can implement tonight to get laser-focused on the right metrics and leave mediocrity far behind in your past. Click that link right now in the description below and apply for your call immediately. Do it now.